So the first time I went to try to get sober, I went through a detox, okay? And the day that I got out after the 28 days, I drank. Yep. And drank for a few more years. Blackout drinker. I ended up losing everything. I've talked about it before. And then I tried to go through like a couple, I went into the hospital years later, and yeah, I drank again. And then after a couple of years of that, I find myself just wiped out. I've lost everything. Can barely maintain. Was only 22 years old, and I'm in the fetal position in my bathtub, praying to Jesus, please, I can't do this. What am my whole life's over? Because I couldn't stop the vicious cycle. I couldn't stop it. It was horrible. And in that moment, I surrendered because there was nobody else to go. There was no other help to go to. I tried the doctors. I tried every avenue. I tried controlled drink. I tried, none of the therapy, none of that stuff worked. And what had to take place was an actual total surrender. And because of that surrender, I didn't realize it at that moment. But looking back on it years later, I realized that that's what had happened, because the next day I was in an AA meeting. And I surrendered to that, and I knew at that point I needed to get a sponsor. I needed to do 90 meetings in 90 days. I did like 120. I went to work, went to meetings, went home. That was it. I that's what I focused. I mean, that's, and I, no matter how stupid, I did what my sponsor told me. And a sponsor is just somebody that helps you understand the steps. It's not it's not a cult like people say. You don't have to pay any money unless you want to donate. They don't take any money from the government. They don't. Their traditions don't allow it. It's almost like they knew how the government is, how the science would be if they came in and tried to control it, because the science hates it. But the AA Big Book, the Big Blue Book, so it's listed as one of the most important books ever written. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bible being the most important, but AA is one of the most important. The AA Big Book, because it was a doctor and I think he was an accountant. They, pretty high status people that were falling down drunks in and out of sanitariums. So those would be the people that would know. And they said what the condition of the addict and alcoholic is. It's a spiritual malady. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that it takes for and any alcoholic knows this to be true, that's recovering, it took having to be wiped out, having to you had to lose all hope, that all hope was lost, and then turning to God for help. Not looking anymore to me, you tried everything. And I say this because I think that's where we're at too here. And because of that whole network that wanted to make everything about the jab, it was a way to keep people focused on that science can still fix everything. Well, science has caused a bunch of problems. Does that mean every science and doctor is bad? Of course not. It doesn't. But they want to control it so that your Kennedys, these people want to get you focused on man fixing everything. And ultimately, this creation, look around, it was created by a creator. And that was not of mankind. And yet, instead of us looking to that creator, what do? We look to man. We look to man to fix everything. And not that there's not good men and women that can be of help. But we have become a nation that has become so weak that we have it's been more in the name of science instead of in the name of God. And yet science shows more failures. We just were fooled. So God doesn't want to make people suffer. It's just that truly the only way to truly find any kind of salvation is it takes surrendering. You have to stop saying that you can fix it. Like, that's where I had to stop thinking I could fix it. I could control my drinking. I'd find somebody that would help me. A doctor would give me a drug. I had to get to a place where I lost everything, lost all hope. And then the only else place I had to go was to God. And then, yeah, God got me where I needed to go. And it wasn't to a doctor. It wasn't to science. It wasn't to a hospital. I've said before, I sat in meetings with going through withdrawals, and I got through them. But I mean, it took that. And I think that's how it is for everyone, because the world we live in will do everything to make it about science being the savior. Science wants to be a savior, and yet they're the opposite of it. And the reason it should have been a red flag to people, because everybody has this belief, right, that science, that God gave us science. No, and a different God maybe, not the biblical one. Because the biblical God would not support the science. No, because they've gone out of their way to try to dispute the Bible, to try to say it's not true, to try to mock God. I mean, I've said this before. It's clear that God does not support being mocked. Don't mock God. And science has done all of those things. So if you're a Bible-believing person, then common sense should tell you that God would not support the science. Did he at one time? It's hard to say, because at least as far back as I've researched and looked, it's these schools they go to for so long. It's like it trains them out of having any faith at all. And actually go in opposition to thinking that it's foolish to believe in God. Yet look at the creation, like look at the sky right now. Like, oh, you can't see it, but I mean, wherever you're at, like they didn't create any of that. Isn't it interesting that Elon Musk's rocket ship today, it looked like it hit something. It did. Yeah, I mean, and I see other people saying that. It did. It looked like it hit something. Yeah, like the firmament. I mean, maybe that's the big reason they don't let you go into many locations in Antarctica, right? You can only visit certain area, and it's very limited where you can go there. Yeah, because because there's a firmament, and forever science and technology, they know it. That's why when I say these people know there's a God, they just don't want you to know it. I mean it. They know there's a God. And that firmament is mentioned in the Bible, in Genesis. And this is always what man does. That's why it's the repeating story. I mean, it's the Tower of Babel back in the Old Testament. And it's always man trying to get to God. It's like God will come when he's ready. Like, just stop it. But this is always what man does. So that's the reason why you can't just travel go anywhere you want in Antarctica, is because of all of their expeditions there. Yeah, with drilling holes up into sky ice. Yeah, that's what it's called, sky ice. But it's interesting that Elon Musk's rocket looked a lot like it hit something. So you can believe that or think it's all nonsense, but I would say this: if you think it's all nonsense, then it just shows you've been so brainwashed and conditioned by this world that you can't even step outside the box, because there's more evidence for God than there is for any part of science at this point. Science can say whatever they want and put it on the heels of some evidence base. It doesn't mean it's true. And honestly, the point is that you have to stop looking to man to save you. And you have to stop thinking that you can even save yourself. The best way everybody can save themselves is realize I can't save myself or anybody else until I surrender to God and put full faith there. Then I can help others, and then I will see the truth.